Okay, so let's start. So this is the contributor hangout for November. Agenda, basically we're going to talk about GWT 2.6 and something about unsupported browsers. So Matthew, you want to update us on GWT 2.6 and see where we are with that?
Yeah, so we still had a couple more bug fixes that have been needing to go in, but I think they've all landed now. And then I know Rajiv for GPE, he's been working on a fix to make it compatible with the new version of GWT. I'm not quite sure what his release timeframe is like for that, so maybe we still need to work around it.
Okay.
I'll check with him right after this. But
so he's doing a new version of GP, or
yeah, that GP was accessing a field that we deleted, and we've had a replacement for a long time.
I think the change went into at least into Google 3, so it's just a matter of when they use internal code.
Yeah, so I think I don't know. There's maybe still some stuff to do for GWT 2.6, but we can probably at least put out another release candidate today, and I think it should be in a pretty good shape. We might want, I don't know. We'll see if we can still hit the release deadline for next Monday, but I think at this point maybe we'll want to push it back a week to give people more time.
Are we waiting for more fixes? Or
not so much more fixes, but I feel like if we put out a second release candidate today, and then we've got Thanksgiving holiday, and then Monday we were to do a GA release, it doesn't feel like a very long test time for external contributors.
Okay.
But we'll see what the state of it's
okay,
like.
so you still want to do the release candidate today, but then the final one we will just wait.
Yeah.
And wait until it's called final. Okay.
Yeah.
Say for a week more or something.
Yeah.
What is the state of like IE integration at this point? I know there's one bug we found where there was we had some Firefox specific JavaScript that did not work in IE 11.
You mean the history stuff?
But that
The history problem?
no, I assigned you another bug, the error function, the event firing function.
Oh, I didn't have time to look at this yet, so there still might be a problem.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how much, if there's anything else. Like it seems like anywhere where we have like a get Firefox specific binding, somebody may have assumed it was okay to use Firefox specific features, and then they wouldn't work in IE 11. It seems like kind of a general problem.
So, in terms of, I've seen there were two external bugs filed. One was basically that we are selecting the GECU permutation. The other one was about history.
So they reported in one other problem. We created a different bug to track that. I look at the assigned bugs.
So there's one bug you were saying the problem is you were selecting the wrong permutation, and then we got them to narrow down exactly what the problem was and created another bug for that.
So all of these are with IE
11.
IE 11. Okay. Okay, so it's good. People are kicking the tires on that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wait to fix those as well in 2.6 or?
Well, the broken code's not our code, right? It's somebody using some Firefox specific.
No, it was actually our
our
code.
code.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. If you try to programmatically fire an event, that's broken.
So that's going to impact a lot of test cases.
Yes,
That might
yeah.
have caused some of the test failure we've seen in IE 11.
That's possible.
Okay. How much work is it to fix those with
It
that?
shouldn't be hard. The question is more about finding something compatible with the both versions.
Okay.
So then there's a new way of doing stuff. If it's working with the Firefox versions that we are supporting, we should just switch to that.
Okay.
If that's not the case, we can do a feature-based selection, looking at if the constructor is available, we can do one thing, and not available with others.
Just do a runtime check, basically.
Yeah. It also makes sense for standard-based browsers
Okay.
because the new approaches should be working in all browsers.
So who actually is working on the bug? Is that Daniel and you?
I
or-
assigned Daniel. I just
Okay.
take a preliminary, but we can work together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of fell through the cracks while traveling here. So.
Okay. So that's fine. So Daniel, you're looking at that and talk to helping out. Okay. Anything else in GWT 2.6?
Oh, and I guess just the other thing is I've started putting out Maven daily snapshots. So I at least put out, last week I put out a 2.6 snapshot, and then yesterday I put out a 2.7, or a master snapshot called 2.7.
Okay.
Great. We can, since it's not clear what the next version is going to be named, numbered at the point, I just picked that number arbitrarily.
I think it's fine. It's a snapshot.
Yeah. And so at least that way people will start, it should be easier for external contributors to kind of play with trunk and see how it's going for them.
Great.
I kind of prefer that we commit to calling it 3.0 now. That way we feel like psychologically committed to a big step. Where if we're committing code thinking it's going to be in 2.7, then maybe we feel like we can't make some changes.
I don't feel that way.
I don't feel that.
Well, I'm talking about backwards incompatible changes.
The 2.7 is a good step for starting breaking some stuff too, because if you
So you don't think
break
there's any
all the
higher
roads, then
expectation of compatibility in a 2.7 versus a 3.0?
we already start breaking stuff. Like we cannot drop support for generators in 2.7. But I mean,
We'll see
we can
about
change.
I think actually the idea that just because we call 3.0 we can start breaking stuff left and right is wishful thinking. I think we're not going to
So
be
you're
able to
saying we
break
can do
things
that
up.
in 2.7?
Yeah.
So I think publicly we pretty much said the next release is going to be 3.0,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so
The modular compilation alone may be enough to justify the version number. I just don't think that just because we call it that does not mean, oh, we can just break stuff.
Well, we want to break things for a good reason.
I think for 3.0, the advantage might be a cleaner slate in some sense. So if we have steps to make things deprecated by 2.7, I think we should define what we want to have in 3.0 and deprecate them. I know there are stuff we haven't deprecated, and there will be no release cycle enough to deprecate them by 3.0 if you don't have 2.7. So that's
So you're saying 2.7 is an opportunity to deprecate things so
more
they can
stuff.
be deleted.
Yeah. I
in
tried
3.0.
to rush in a few deprecations, but there are cases like, for example, the activity and places has event pass, and event pass is relying on the older event pass. This is one of the highest rated bugs, and there's no way to make it compatible. So it's going to be breaking change, and
So I think this is sort of leading to a discussion of what is the next release going to be. Is it going to be 2.7, 3.0? Things like that.
Also think about releasing features. I see more value on, for example, JS interoperability. I think we should have more time to test and decide how things going to look like at the end. So if we make a 3.0 release and call it experimental, then it will be like the other releases we have made, where we release stuff like the elemental itself, and then it's marked as experimental, and it lived like that forever. I think we should spend time, and if you're gonna make something experimental, do it by 2.7 and then finalize the APIs, and at 3.0 is cleaner slate.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think there might actually be some value that we can ship before 3.0, like the GSS resources, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
If those are going to be done in January, that's actually a good point of just making a release to make CSS3 work.
Also,
Well,
if you're gonna
there
do
is no
something,
just making a release. It's a fair amount of work. So.
Also, if you're gonna do something incompatible on this GSS case, it gives more room for switching through CSS versus GSS in 2.7. So there are a lot of advantages with that. But
Yeah, we could actually.
They are numbers like that.
Yeah, I think generally we try not to have way too many releases, right? The fewer, the less.
So how much
like
work
we were
is-
thinking basically every 6 months or so, right? So I think the question is, in the next 6 months, are we going to call it 2.7? Are we going to call it? Or there's going to be so many changes, we should want to call it 3.0.
Yeah,
Right? I think that's the basic
January
choice.
release might not be realistic.
And I'm not targeting January. I'm just saying that might be done in January, and then we could sum up some more stuff and then see maybe in March or something.
We are not gonna put another release at that. We're gonna just push the releases. Or call different names.
Yeah, because there's a fair amount of effort, right? So I think.
How much effort is that actually?
But it's not just the effort for us to put in; it's also for customers who are going to roll to the next version, right? So somebody rolled to 2.6 now, and then in a few months you do 2.7. Then again,
in the past, it has always been pretty easy with GWT.
So we've been doing releases. So we did 2.4. Let's see, we did in mid 2000. We've been doing around 6 months.
That's not a good example, but if you take a look at 2.0 to 2.4, that's basically been like every 9 months, or sometimes even shorter.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we've done about approximately 6 months, right? Every release. So and I think that's a reasonable frequency, right, for people to move forward. And so the next 6 months, so if you do one in November, the next one we were planning on was around Google I/O time, which was kind of like May-ish time frame. So the question really is, do you want to call it 2.7, 3.0, or do you still want to go and do some intermediate release between now and May?
I think the deprecation stuff is a good reason to do it, and to get feedback on some of the stuff we want to see in 3.0. Maybe that's just pushing 3.0 by a couple of months and doing something.
Does it make sense to add some deprecation stuff in a point release, like a 2.6.1 or something, or is that a bad idea?
We could probably do
I think we can also do that.
Yeah, I think 2.6.1 makes sense, because there's at least a couple other things I've had in mind that.
Just for a bunch of deprecation stuff and maybe some odds and ends.
Yeah.
We would actually just cut that from the branch then, wouldn't we?
I would think since we already have a lot of breaking changes in master, like we've started removing IE6 stuff. I think 2.6.1, we don't want to push that out. I think we want to continue cherry picking things into release 2.6, and we'll just
fixes and deprecations only, maybe. Like that.
We would just allow more stuff to be backported or patch back into the release 2.6 branch and cut another release from that.
So, yeah, let's discuss this. I think it's going to take a little bit of more discussion anyway on exactly what.
So I guess there's one other thing, a question I had about 2.6, which was, what are we doing with? There were a few patches that we keep having to roll back to work in Google 3.
Yeah.
And
I haven't.
We're trying to get through those, I think, is what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm still fixing stuff in Google 3, but it looks like I have. Actually, I can't talk about that. So there's only image resource. For the image resource page, there's only one remaining test case that's failing. So I think we will be able to go through that one. The problem with that one is there might be another bug in somewhere else, perhaps compiler that's blocking me right now. So that will be in. The other one is the HTML unit. Those are on my priority list. So currently, it looks like we can pull it through. But if we can't, I think we should revert change.
Revert the change on
both
into the U6 branch.
It will be painful to have different versions of GT and servlet APIs in different.
Yeah, we don't want to have
even
different.
For other people not testers.
I'm trying hard to make it work in Google 3. So if we can manage to do that, that's what we're gonna do. But we will not try to diverge. And so that might be a release delaying thing.
Okay.
Okay, so we will talk about the next release again at some point. So we'll after we get through this one. Let's see. The next topic was unsupported browsers. You want to talk about that?
Actually, I just noticed that there has been some discussions I didn't follow. So I had to make an assumption on which permutation is used based on server-side selection. I think that's different in client-side selection. So I need to look at the other proposals, but the general idea is how to handle unsupported browsers. Currently, we have IE10 or IE9 running in compatibility mode, or there's an old browser running out there. It's currently not, so we don't have valid permutation for those. So I thought, actually, for server-side selection, script uses Gecko, That's the bug report I received. In those cases, it basically breaks a lot of stuff. Like history is broken, for example, and as the history is broken, they started receiving reports on exceptions from very long URLs because we keep adding stuff on the end of the URL. So
yeah, it's basically encoding all the time.
yeah, exactly. That's when I see the long URL, I see all this history. So then I look at the permutation.
So here's what I'm thinking. We could be moving GWT into a model of two permutations, like one modern permutation and one Quarks permutation. Obviously, all the browsers would just choose the Quarks permutation. We could put all the craft and all the feature detection stuff into the Quarks permutation, basically blow it up in size, and have the modern permutation be really crisp and on the spot.
What are we going to do right now, though? I think we have to
the problem with I thought that even we had that, the problem is we don't really support some legacy browsers. Like we don't support IE6. So in case of IE6, there are still like 0.5, 0.2% of unsupported browsers out there. And when an application runs on those browsers, it's basically broken. Yeah. And that means they will, the applications will start producing weird exceptions, and it will be reported back. And that's a pain in managing those.
So I'm thinking that's something you should actually be handling on the servlet side. If you see a user agent that's not supported, just don't send them the GWT page, send them some unsupported page.
I agree.
Yeah, so the problem with that is that your supported processes are changing with the GWT part. So if you
keep the servlet in sync.
Yeah, basically. So if you have a servlet side,
the client can do that same work, right? Like the client could do the detection and give a warning message.
You could need our bootstrap.
Yeah, not always. If you're thinking about like smaller phones like they use in India or something, the JavaScript is actually not executed on the phone. It's executed on some proxy, and then it's actually sent down to the device. So probably you still want to be.
Well, but still the JavaScript being executed.
But what if we just put a servlet for this into GWT?
So if you have a server-side selection going on, that's not a problem. We already fixed it for one of the internal customers, but for anything else, I think it's easy to provide the functionality in GWT so that the application can decide how to handle it. They can just forward you to an unsupported browser page, or they can just show a bar on top, or they can make a decision. So I think we should be providing those pieces.
Yeah. So in the Bootstrap script, we're trying to decide what permutation it is. We could have.
It already has something for this.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, so if you compile like only the Gecko permutation and then you view it with WebKit and you view that page, you get something from the Bootstrap saying this is an unsupported browser. So we just need to like patch into that.
I think there's actually been a meta tag where you could have a you can just put a JavaScript function that is executed if the selection script fails or something like that.
Yeah.
There might have been some feature like this.
Yeah. There has been some suggestions. I didn't read through. Dan Thomas and Jens was discussing, so I will take a look. But one other option, what I was originally thinking, was to have a specific permutation so they can totally choose what they want to do instead of having a function.
Well, the problem is adding another browser permutation can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So I think that having putting something in the Bootstrap script makes more sense, actually.
Okay. Yeah, and so let's follow up this email thread, right? So we just continue there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so I think you might be actually able to have a function that just replaces the URL with the unsupported page or something like that.
Yeah, you can take a look at it.
One way or another. The existing one gives you a pop-up that just says it doesn't recognize
that one is a custom assertion. It's based on the script selected versus the valid values.
Yeah, basically if you can't find a matching permutation.
So if you have like support for IE6 and somehow you search Gecko, then it will.
Then you won't trigger that. Yeah. But maybe you should trigger that somehow.
Yeah. So I just basically said we'll follow up on the discussion in the list and go from there. Let's see, anything else that people want to talk about? Okay, so I think that's pretty much it then for the public hangout. Okay, so I'm going to tell them to stop recording. Not yet.